Welcome everyone to the World Federation of Young Theosophists group discussion on Light on the Path. Glad that you can make it. And first things first, just a 2-minute meditation where we try to focus on, that part of us that's deeper than the personality and always the observer, never the observer. So that's starting now. Thank you for that. And, here's the first quote that we can read and discuss. Before we read it, just something quick about the book itself. Uh, it's written down by Mabel Collins. The idea is that she herself didn't write it. Uh, the idea is that this book is older than time itself, however that works. And the way that Mabel Collins got this book is through the higher planes, essentially, and it's not her own words and text. Uh, so with that being said, is anyone here willing to read this first quote? If not, I could read it. But if you want to read it, just read.
I can do that, Seth.
Awesome.
The 21 rules are seen in the astral light, written on the walls of the antechamber by all disciples who are traveling towards the central flame, who have turned away from the darkness of self, and those who have not learned the earlier ones, which are all related to the mystery of pain, have to retrace their steps over the weary road of material life. And perhaps even in a more material world than this, those who are fortunate enough to read them and understand their meaning while embodied have a great responsibility. Miss it, and then indeed a harder task is set. Pleasure and pain, Mabel Collins.
Thank you. And that last line there, pleasure and pain, Mabel Collins. Uh, this is a different book that she had written as a commentary on Light on the Path. A lot of these quotes here uh, are not actually from Light on the Path, but are commentaries on it. It's disclosure there. And I feel that there's a lot to unpack in this particular quote. I don't know if there's anything in particular that someone wants to look at first. And silence is completely fine. I think what strikes me first here is towards the end of the quote. Those who are fortunate enough to read them and understand their meaning while embodied have a great responsibility. Miss it, and then indeed a harder task is set. Kind of a warning to us that maybe it's not necessarily good luck that we can read these and understand them now, because if we don't do something with it, uh, it may end up dragging us down more than it lifts us up. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about that. Another interesting idea to me from this is that these rules, there's two sets of 21 rules, and the idea is that these rules exist outside of space and time. So no matter if anyone from the physical plane, if humanity knows about these rules or not, they exist, and they're the way for us to leave the material world that we're stuck in, which I think is also interesting. That these are somehow inherent in reality. Yeah, I guess I would ask, what does that mean to you if these rules are inherent in the structure of reality? Does that make you uh, feel any kind of way towards them? That, does that set off alarm bells in your mind, make you want to turn away from them, be more skeptical or anything? Another part of this is that it says that those who have not learned the earlier rules, which are all related to the mystery of pain, which we'll get to next, uh, they have to retrace their steps over the weary road of material life. Which again, I think is another warning. And we could ask ourselves, what would it feel like to have to retrace our steps in this physical world? Uh, Maybe there's moments in our lives where we feel like something's deja vu, we've seen it before. Maybe that is this. I don't know if anyone's ever felt that. And last question I have on this, and then we'll go to the next one, is uh, why do you think it's a harder task if we can read and understand these rules and then fail to heed its instruction? Uh, why do you think that would make this harder if we read it and ignore it versus if we've never seen it at all? Does that make sense, or does it not make sense? Yeah, Mary Kay. And you can always unmute and speak whenever anyone.
Okay, thank you. I don't have a very good microphone this time, but I really got stuck with first thing you brought up, and now you did it again. And you ask why it is harder if we ignore it. It's like we got this amazing luck that we are able to read it before it's our time to read it in a in an astral light. We are reading this like in this material level, and this is unbelievably like luck. I don't know how to put it. Somehow we maybe have earned it, but uh, but if we do not use it, we are making a karma. Even act that is not undone act is also an action, and um, we are not using this gift, and that means that uh, we're not ready to get next gift. But this is like a small thing because we're getting something that we haven't entirely earned. Like entirely earned means that we are able to read it on our own in astral level. But if you get it beforehand, then I don't know. I feel very much like you should do something with that knowledge if you have that kind of luck. Like try to, the very least, try to live according to it. Try. I don't say you must succeed. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. On a practical note, Mary Kay, if you have another mic, that one was a little hard to understand. It was a little muffled. Maybe it's the internet. But I was able to understand most of what you're saying, and I agree. Yeah, it seems kind of like a karmic thing, right? If you have an opportunity and you don't use that opportunity you were given, it creates karma in the opposite direction, maybe.
Uh, so Seth, I just wanted to bring up something that this reminded me of, in this particular tone. So Adi Shankaracharya, the great thinker, the great Indian thinker, in one of his statements, he says, getting a human life is one in an impossible odds kind of a thing, in this evolutionary cycle. And then in that human life, if you're if you even have a little bit of an exposure to knowledge, then that is like again multiplied, like you're even more millionfold lucky. And he says, even with all of that, if you do not trace that path, then I mean, he also talks of it in a warning kind of a tone. So yeah, I just wanted to say that this reminded me of that particular quote by Shankaracharya.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Mhm. That's
Sorry,
good.
I came a little. Thank you. Um, well, I think this is a mix of extremely symbolic and it's talking at a level that I obviously cannot talk about the 21 rules in the astral light. I don't know if any of us is exposed to this knowledge in the astral plane. Probably many of us, at least at certain degree. But at least on my case, I tell you, I'm completely unconscious of it. I'm not aware if I am getting any kind of training or if I am being in any kind of help on the astral plane. I don't know. What I tend to think is that we shouldn't be thinking so much, for me, on warning and punishing and in this kind of terms. I think this is something we have to free ourselves from, because I think it's always a question of learning. And probably when you are giving something which is very precious, and you have developed the capacity to understand that message, but you have not developed the capacity to appreciate the preciousness, then you need to get a new round of learning to make you aware of its preciousness, so you can really put it into action properly, no? But I really don't think that the idea of warning, punishing, and this, it's like we are pushing us to do one thing, and in the other hand, we are castrating our capacity to do it by this very reward punish way of understanding the karma. I think that's a very, very low self understanding of karma, my personal opinion. And I think we have to open ourselves to the idea of learning. That's all. It's a learning. So it's telling you, look, if that level has been developed, then when she says harder, it's harder from these self eyes, but basically it's going just to expose us again to understand that value, no, on a way that it will become very obvious to us. And maybe sometimes we need a rock to fall in our head to realize that, somebody can say, oh, that's a punishment, because maybe just simply what was necessary for that thing to happen, simple. I mean, so I also have to be very aware that the knowledge they are talking here, I don't necessarily at all think that because we are part of the Theosophical Society or because we have had that impulse to start researching this, we should put ourselves in a situation of like a throne of, oh, we are more responsible because we are holding this. Maybe there is somebody that doesn't have any kind of karma book, but naturally, on their way of incorporating that into their character, into the way they treat people, into the way for me, it's all the time the same. Stop judging ourselves, stop judging the people. Can we just understand slowly. And so we have to be careful, because I don't think the fact of having this book again means that, oh, now we have this responsibility. Be careful. It can be very simple people that we think they don't have this, who are our teachers, and maybe by far much more involved than us. Thank you.
Yeah, those are really good counterpoints to, keep us more sane about this whole approach. And I think it is worth pointing out that this quote comes from Pleasure and Pain, which is a commentary by the woman Mabel Collins, not, the higher source of his teaching, whatever that may be. So it could be wrong. And what you're saying, focusing on this responsibility and harder task, maybe that's the wrong way to approach it. Did anyone else have thoughts on this before we go to the next one? All right. Is anyone willing to read this quote?
I can do it if you understand my accent.
Yeah, we do.
With awakening comes sight, and by degrees, the power of judging of what is seen. In due time, it is possible to him to see the whole of the set of aphorisms and rules known as light on the path, where they appear upon the wall for all to read who are able to read. Some see this wall as I first saw it, a blaze of jewels, but sooner or later the developing sight perceives the meaning of this splendor, and the jewels show themselves as jewel words containing that light which the disciple demands.
The first question that I want to ask that this brings to mind is, she's talking about seeing light on the path, on a wall in some kind of astral location, which is like a plane subtler than the physical, like maybe an emotional plane where she sees them. But the question I would ask for us here, because we're not there, is how could that apply to us now in the physical plane? As above, so below. So how could this idea of awakening and seeing things and judging what is seen apply to us on the physical plane? And kind of attached to that, related to that, is this idea that I often gravitate towards, that I don't know what I don't know yet, which kind of keeps me humble. I have a tendency to turn things into missions in my life. Well, this is what I'm supposed to do, and I just focus on that. But this idea that we don't know yet, is kind of counterpoint to that, because I could turn something into a mission that I'm not seeing clearly yet, and I need to slow down. So I don't know if anyone else ever sees that in their lives, where sometimes we're self-aware that we don't see everything as it is, and what that self-awareness, that there could be more, then makes us think about, or how does it change the way we act, perceive things. Yeah, okay.
I just like in Northern we talk about a little bit with Pablo Sender about this idea of seeing and hearing and the lower cities and the higher cities, and I think the astral seeing might be the lower cities. And he explained that actually, in order to get enlightened, you really don't need to develop all the lower ones. That it's enough for the higher ones. And there's actually many people or souls who get to nirvana or enlightened without fully developing them. But at the same time, like the masters and some of the people who are staying with humanity to help them, they need to, in order to work better, to truly develop also the lower ones. But I think it is, in that sense, it's not so important to actually be able to see it on yourself, then that we have the possibility of some kind souls who is putting those words into this booklet that we are studying right now. And what is important is what we are doing with this given possibility, and not so much worry about whether we see or should see on our own. Yeah, this is the thought I come. Thank you.
Just to add a little bit to what Mary-Kay said there about cities, if I may. Yeah, a lot of traditions usually discourage, the disciples to seek for them actively because it is believed that they are still in the realm of Maya. It is still, in a way, directly, indirectly, tends to boost your, lower manas, your lower ego. And that is one reason why it isn't an essential for you to really reach self-realization or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it. So that's one reason, because a lot of times even the most attained spiritual seekers would get distracted because of these cities. They just get knocked away from their core mission, their core path. So yeah, it's just still, we're still operating in the realm of Maya. But siddhis in general need not be all right or all wrong, and perhaps they are useful in cases where you want to use it for a higher purpose. Yeah, but still, it's to be done with a lot of discernment.
I have a question in regards of your both comments. So you are understanding that, a question, is this that you are understanding that the lower cities are like this, I first saw it as a blaze of jewels. So you are understanding this first sight of the jewels as the cities and or okay, Kiran says no, so I would thank you for the clarification. How are you connecting these jewels with the cities? Thank you. To understand, just curiosity, not denying.
Yeah, I was actually wondering that too. I was thinking maybe because Mabel Collins is alluding to seeing these things on the astral plane. Is that where here in America you were coming from? And that's kind of a city.
Yes, I was thinking that she might be a clairvoyant, like a clear seer or clear hearer, or somehow being able to sense this astral plane or whatever plane it was written. Yeah, that was what. But I'm not so familiar with that. It was just the first expression that I had. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and that's a valid point, because out of context, this quote could look like it's promoting people to develop that power when it's probably not. Anything else for this slide?
Yeah, no, I personally wouldn't connect it. Sorry if I just jumped and said sorry there.
No.
Yeah, no, I wasn't directly connecting this to Siddhi's Fatima. It's just because Mary-Kay, brought that up. I just thought of adding a bit of a comment to that. But no, to me, this more sounds like the first time you get a glimpse of, the super consciousness, or the ultimate, or the supreme. And where if you are kind of primed or receptive enough, what it is. That's maybe that's what she is trying to say, that a blaze of jewel, like some people would maybe in traditions where they focus a lot on the third eye for meditation, and sometimes they might see a big glow, like an orange blue light, which could be then maybe in a way referred to as a blaze of jewels. And then those jewels, would sometimes, or people then start getting like, whispers of wisdom during meditations. And those could be the jewel words, it's the crown experience kind of manifesting itself through some sort of insights. And maybe it could be a reference to that. Or, I mean, just essentially it just means the first glimpse of the ultimate. Now, how you do it, of course, it depends on individual paths, but to me, it just sounds like the first darshan. Darshan is what, would be the word in Sanskrit for that. The first time you get a personal experience, a personal contact with the divine, and, it just feels, the way that she's described, a blaze of jewels, so yeah, for me, that probably makes more of a direct connections than siddhis.
Thank you. Yeah, no, and that makes it make more sense to me, to be honest. Bringing it to the physical plane, I think of sometimes people get like flashes of beauty in their life, whereas maybe it's almost emotional, but trans emotional at the same time, where you can feel that everything makes sense. Everything is in its right place for a moment, and maybe that could be this flash, and then over time, that flash develops into something more concrete, where you can kind of see a particular situation. This is exactly what I could be doing and why. Maybe something like that.
I wanted to ask you, everybody, like, or propose a small. Do you think before developing the proper clairvoyance, let's say, do you feel we have a graduation of a process of becoming more sensitive? And maybe do you think we could relate to this idea of a different way of looking at things, like from the point where we are now, in the sense, for example, of truly from our heart embracing the things with again, with a deeper lesson or meaning that they may have, Do you think, are we able to start each small circumstance, even the smallest, do you think we are able to start making that exercise of looking through the jewel, but not with this clairvoyant thing? Let's say we are a little more blind and we just have a heart. And then we melt a little into all these ideas we may think, but we try to melt from the heart. And then we may start to say, wait, maybe it's not bad luck, sorry, maybe it's not just a shitty day, which it can be. But what I try to say is that, do you think we are able to see some light, a deeper meaning behind the small things? And do you think this may be a path to start seeing the things of life as looking at the light behind these things? You see what I mean? Does it make sense? I'm throwing it, You tell me.
It does make sense. Yeah. It reminds me of another one of the rules from Land on the Path. Before the ear can hear, it must have lost its sensitiveness. Because maybe seeing those, shitty days, like you said, are not really so bad, and it's just developing something in us. And even in the moment, you can see it that way.
Yeah, Fatima, I would say that's a very beautiful question and a point at the same time, because what you said is like there could be multiple ways of coming to the same realization, and that kind of depends on one's individual temperament, sensitivities as well. People who are more inclined towards the bhakti tradition, or just the love of the Christ, for them, they don't really need that clairvoyance. It is for them, the explosion can really happen from the heart center, and they would really see a lot of meaning and purpose in that situation. If people are more intellectually inclined, then for them, jnana yoga would be, more of a suitable path. Then the yogic and the kriya ones will have, dhyana yoga and those kind of things. And karma yoga, people sometimes don't even know what is the larger purpose in life. They don't even want to know. They don't want to get into these intellectual battles, but they just have this deeper appreciation to life, which they are not able to fully verbalize. But they know that the divine is serving them through one way or the other. They don't understand it, how, why, what plane, which plane, but they just feel that if I'm being served, I shall serve too. So they get into the karma yoga, the path of service. They just want to serve selflessly. And for them, that happens to be a deeper point of realization. So that's a very beautiful point and a question at the same time. But it's also a very important one. And I think as a TS, tradition, that's very central to who we are anyway. So, these multiple ways, multiple paths, multiple appreciations of the same topic, or the same truth. Yeah.
I don't know, I'm kind of impressed you have such a good understanding of how that more devotional aspect would be, because it seems very intellectual, and that, I don't know, to see how they would perceive the world kind of makes me have a lot more sympathy for them. People who just want to feel things out and not necessarily understand why. In the past, I would probably, honestly, to my shame, look down on people like that when I shouldn't, because it's just a different way to operate.
That's such a honest admission as well, Seth. And we all sometimes, from time to time, when we get into these territories, we, they subconsciously tend to have a similar tendency to perhaps look down onto those who don't really have the same appreciation of what we are talking about. We always have that. Or we could easily label some people as, oh, it's such low vibration, or that's unconsciousness, or whatever. People always have their own bombs to throw at others. Maybe the labels are different, and we all kind of go through that. But that is where, again, this, I think this aspect of love, devotion, humility, it also humbles you. And to have that is really important, because intellectually, yes, because the intellectual side is also very close to getting egoic, because one can really get proud of what they understand. One can, it's even some people even go on to say that, oh, I have no ego. But it's like, in India we say you should not have ego also about not having an ego. You see. So it's tricky, yes. And this is where I think devotion, service, these elements, and therefore we always need a balance, because these are grounding elements. They keep us humble. We're not all perfect. We're all work in progress. We still have our own messy lives, and we're still trying to navigate, through all of that, and trying to reach our final destination, which we don't really know. Might or might not happen in one life or the next 100 lives, but we are on the path nevertheless.
I think it's very important what we are discussing, because obviously here she's talking about something which is, I think, is making us ready for something that I think what you were saying, Kiran, it may be now, probably in the next life or whatever. It's important that this knowledge is there. So whoever starts to feel these things has a guide, no? And actually also they say in the Masonic training or work, the main point is to teach the people what happens after death. Not so much because they are going to be able to access those planes, everybody right now, but to start removing the fear of death. Therefore, you start to have to be more alive in your life without that fear, and not aiming, the ideal Masonic knowledge, the ideal Masonic practice, not what real happens in that. I'm not going to enter there. But according, for example, to Leadbeater talks. On this way, I feel that she's talking to us about something that, at least for me, it's very, this sight, this power of judging what it's seen, this thing. But I somehow feel that despite this out of our, something we cannot reach consciously right now, somehow, two things, somehow it's operating within us without knowing this. I think there is something on the subconscious, which, as I say, is starting to remove the fears of whatever can happen, and is also removing the limitations on a way that what we can see is what it is. There is somewhere in our head with these words is saying, hey, despite you cannot perceive it now, it's not just like that, And the second is, I think the exercise what we are doing is like, okay, with that as a perspective of what may happen, how do we, how does help this? How does this help us now to put the things into the place, having that as a perspective, no? How can we rearrange? How can this knowledge makes us, as whatever we were saying before, the sensitivity, the meanings we can find, can this help us to feel less anxious? Can we maybe start to see what are the things that imprison us more right now? When we are just thinking on a very mortal material logic versus this logic she's giving us, Yeah. Yeah, it's you talking and then you make me talk. Thank you.
That's good. It's good analysis of the power of judging what is seen. Exactly what the quote's about. Here's the next one. This video is kind of intense. I hope no one gets sick. I'll read this one because I feel bad about it. The first four aphorisms of Light on the Path refer entirely to astral development. This development must be accomplished to a certain extent. That is to say, it must be fully entered upon before the remainder of the book is really intelligible, except to the intellect. In fact, before it can be read as a practical, not a metaphysical treatment. And those first four aphorisms, I'll say them real fast. It's before the eyes can see, they must be filled with tears. Before the ear can hear, it must have lost its sensitiveness. Before the voice can speak in the presence of the master, it must have lost the ability to word. And before the soul can stand in the presence of the master, its feet must be lost in the blood of the heart. And it said that those four aphorisms are kind of an overview of the rest of the book. So they're a condensed version of what everything else is pointing us towards. Maybe it could be good practice to look at what the difference is between someone who's interested in a metaphysical treaty versus a practical one. They both obviously have value, but in different ways. And maybe it's helpful to know, which direction we personally want to go, which kind of person we are and why. Maybe it's also worth asking this astral development. Could this be independent of those cities that we talked about earlier? Can astral development be something else that's not focused on, these powers that can so easily elevate the ego? Can it be something deeper?
I think maybe it refers to astral development as us essentially at first understanding our own human instruments, not necessarily to achieve any sort of siddhis. but to understand the astral tendencies, the pain and the pleasure and desires and all those things that are driving us, to really understand where they are coming from. Because that, to understand, I think, is the first step of developing anything. To, have a good mastery over our impulses. So only when one happens to, either have a better appreciation or control of these elements, can they then appreciate the metaphysical, or maybe even start living the metaphysical truth. But the astral development, not in the sense of cities, they would still serve as distractions, in my humble opinion, but it is a stepping stone to the, to the plane beyond, is how I would see this.
Sorry, Kiran, can you repeat the last thing? You were saying can serve as steps to the plane belong. What do you mean, the cities or the?
No, astral development, not cities.
Okay.
So astral development, I was referring to in a way of understanding our emotional, needs and desires and pain and pleasure and these impulses that are driving us, and to understand them, and then to attain certain mastery over them, so that we can go beyond these, and to really live the truth. Or integrate the truth with our astral realities, which might be different for different individual, and it is so anyway. But I mean, the composition of it. I mean, so that is what I was trying to.
It's funny because when we are talking about astral plane, I mean, in one hand, of course, please, anybody please help me on this or add, but astral, we are talking in one hand exactly about our emotions, our, like, on the other hand, you have the awareness of the astral world, or people, not necessarily even through see this development, but even these close to death experiences, where you have all these testimonies of people that are coming out of their bodies. They are able to know what's going on, other parts of the world, what's going on in this. This is people who are suddenly, so we have the astral plane as a dimension. And I think that's why she's saying, I think there are different ways of, different layers of reading this book. For people who probably have had that experience, or who are able to be, I don't know if this is a city, or I don't know how to call it. It is definitely a development on the sense of the consciousness who is able to go into those planes. Like we know Annie Besant and Ed Peter, for example, the way they wrote the occult chemistry, they explain it at the beginning. It's amazing. How they explain it is that they are able to, they were able to become small themselves, their consciousness, as seeing the atomic level on this scale. You know, like this movie of, this old movie where the people became very small and the grasses were like gigantic trees. So obviously,
the kids. Yeah.
Yes, but 1,000,000 times more. You read it, it's on the occult chemistry, is the introduction, which I found amazing. So I think there is one layer of reading this, or for people who have had this, whatever, awakening, skill, whatever, the astral level, in the sense of moving that. I think this is a guide for them to see, these things are happening, and you will find this. And in that sense, it's similar to what I was saying about the Masonic. They give a training for whenever you will see yourself perceiving, which for sure will happen to all of us when we die. But some people may have that experience before, and they need a guidance, no? But in the other hand, it's very interesting, Kiran, because you are saying also, And this is what I'm saying also about the practical thing. Astral also are the motions. And we are not able to see the vibration of the motions. We are not able to see that because we are not in that side. Still, there is also an astral work to do, you know? And I think what is very interesting, and she's saying here, is that it can be this metaphysical treatise for those, and it can be something practical for some other people, like us or me. I don't know you. And yeah, astral development has also these two ways of seeing it, no? You develop your emotions, your this, or there is this development of once you are able to enter in that dimension. Annie Besant was saying she needed to learn how to travel there, and she needed to learn to understand what she was seeing. And she needed also the knowledge of this other guy that was writing with them, who was a chemistry person, to help them to understand what they were seeing. Because, so she was says this is a crazy world with thousands of lights, explosions, and everything. Imagine being inside that atom. What that would be, no? So I think it's amazing, these two levels of lecture.
Yeah, I would say if you're able to go deep within yourself, beyond your minds and everything, then to go deep inside an atom is not going to be any different, because it's the same reality that pervades everything in the universe. But I think this development need not always be a sequential event. Like, it's not that you first develop the astral. It need not always be that way, because a lot of times people do have momentary realizations, deep experiences, but those insights and realizations need not always translate into their living reality, like a permanent, reality for them. It might just happen like a momentary spark from time to time that happens to them because of a certain setting that they entered, maybe because of certain practices they did in a certain environment, and it happened sometimes, but was not their living reality. So for them then to understand that, okay, I'm getting these bits and pieces of realizations and flashes from time to time. However, for some reason, it's not my reality yet. So there is something between that and me, which is, interfering the path. And that is where all these astral tendencies come into the picture, our physical, our emotional desires, passions, these things that are always constantly, swaying us in different directions, and are sometimes even making it difficult for us to always be rooted in the ultimate reality. So yeah, for some people it might just happen so that they got a glimpse of it, but then for them to really make that a living reality, they had to do the astral work a lot, and their emotional patterns and needs and stuff like that. For some, of course, the prodigies and the gifted ones, maybe they don't need that, right? So they can directly dig into the metaphysical aspects. But I would say a huge majority of people would definitely appreciate the need for astral development a lot.
And just because this next quote is almost a continuation of the same thing, I'll go ahead and read this one now. So the first four rules of light on the path are undoubtedly, curious though the statement may seem, the most important in the whole book, save only one. Why they're so important is that they contain the vital law, the very creative essence of the astral man. And it is only in the astral or self-illumined consciousness that the rules which follow them have any living meaning. And not to take away from the conversation we're just having, because it's directly related. So it makes me think of this idea that our physical bodies are fully developed and we have full control over them easily. I can move my arm in whatever way that I want. And our emotional body is fully developed, but we don't have control over it yet. And maybe that's why the beginning of Light on the Path is so much about these emotions, because what we're meant to be doing, even though we're also developing our mental body, which is not fully developed, and we obviously don't have full control of. We're meant to be focusing on the emotions for whatever reason, and it also makes me think of if we believe, this alleged occult history of the Earth. We were all there in Atlantis, this continent that is now destroyed, and it was destroyed because we had this fully developed emotional body that ran amok, and we didn't control at all. And we're here now trying to maybe retrace those steps, control it.
Ted, I don't understand you totally, but I don't know if it's only me or the microphone. Sorry. Maybe it's me, eh? Can the rest hear him properly? I hear you, but some words are a little not clear. Sorry.
I have
And
the
I
same
want to...
problem. Yeah, sorry, I have the same problem, but most of part I understand.
Okay. I'll try to change my microphone.
It could be because you're using the Bluetooth mic. Sometimes it makes the sound a bit choppy or there's a bit of a lag. But I've been able to follow you, of course, by and large. But yeah, I can totally understand why the others feel so.
Sorry about that.
My English
No,
is
you
not
don't,
that
you
good.
don't.
That's the reason also.
Actually, I was able to follow it pretty okay too. So yeah, I think it's the Bluetooth.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good feedback. It's the computer now. Hopefully it sounds better.
Yes, I think so.
It's much clearer now. So, yeah.
Super. So can I ask you to repeat? Sorry, Seth.
Yeah, just this idea that our different bodies are developed in different capacities. Our physical body is fully developed and we have full control of it. The emotional body is fully developed and we don't have full control of it. And then just to go the next step higher, just for reference, the mental body is not fully developed and we definitely don't have full control, but our thoughts go everywhere all the time. And I think maybe the reason that Light on Path seems to focus on astral emotional development is because that's what we need more than anything else. That is if we believe the occult history, the exact reason that Atlantis failed. And we had these different factions there that were destroying each other. Yeah, so maybe by the end of our human lives, our emotions will be to us as our physical body is, and we can control the I don't know, the feelings that will propagate out to the rest of the world directly with our will. And it's not cause and effect like it is right now.
Hello, I'm late, but I'm just listening to everyone. And yeah, I totally agree that it's important to develop the astral body. And if not, it's going to be like a major stumbling block as we unfold ourselves spiritually. So I remember in Big Hao Chun's book, the self-transformation, power of self-transformation. He mentions these things that are like kind of stuck in our emotional body that tend to make us react to things blindly as like conditionings. And he kind of gave us like a practical way to process our fears and anxieties and all that. And I do think that even though we feel like we don't want to be we don't want to be any part of, we don't want to have any part of these seemingly very childish lower emotions, but somehow we are very much tied to them. So yeah, it's important to really go deep into them and sort of purify and yeah, transform ourselves from there. That's my take.
That's really, yeah, that makes sense, Flor. I think here, on the other hand, what happens is an important aspect of compassion, because compassion is key when we do that. Because, like what you said, when you have the childlike or childish, childish emotions or whatever, it is coming because of a certain reason, perhaps because of certain unmet needs or unmet desires, and it's still kind of dominating it. So I think compassion is always something that's really key, I feel, in the process of self-transformation or development, because, yeah, and I'm just going to make a casual remark here, so please excuse me for that, but I think the physical body is the most innocent of all, but it still gets all the bad name. Right. It is born with a certain genetic imprint. It's just working according to that, and all the habits and all that get formed is all coming from the astral realm. But then, it's being acted out through the physical body, and therefore the physical gets the bad name. But it's the most innocent of all, is what I would say. The physical body is
That's so
actually,
true.
it's dormant. It doesn't really it doesn't really have its own capacity. It's just following instructions that we're constantly being feeding it over and over again. And so the astral development therefore becomes more important here, you see, because that is like a bridge between the physical and the beyond.
Yeah, that makes sense. Our physical body is just our horse. It's the animal we are. Did anyone else have anything else before we go to the last 2 minutes of silence?
One question. These first 4 rules, we have not read them yet, no?
No. This is a
okay.
prelude.
Because I was a little late. I said, maybe I just missed the whole thing.
No, they're coming later.
Okay.
We haven't actually read
Looking forward.
a single line. None of this is from Line of the Path yet, so sorry.
Okay.
Those are all comments.
And I just wanted to, on top of Clover, with the idea of Clover, like we and Kira and everybody, we are talking about this developing of the astral body on emotions that makes us, conditions us so much, and mental, and I think it's like they say, okay, as far as we are trapped into this, we cannot see, but without seeing a little, we cannot get out of them. You see what I mean? I don't know how you say in English. In Spain, we say a fish trying to eat its own tail. So, it's not like, okay, let's clean all the astral, then let's look at the aspiration, or no. So I think it's kind of vicious cycle. Thank you. And it's kind of like, I feel that there is some truths that may be understood just a little, will, put the seed, so they will help us to put more understanding, compassion, what Kiran was saying, into this. And then this understanding, compassion will let us see a little more of that light. And then like that, I guess maybe that's why we are here together, mining together. And let's see, where do we, how can we reach?
Yeah, I really liked what Seth just commented in the chat. He said you have to turn the vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle. That's that's something that we have to work on. But you're right, Fatima. I mean, to know what you want, you first have to know what you want, right? How would you know what you want without knowing what you want, right? So it's like, but then that's where I think these flashes of realizations, they either come to us sometimes directly, indirectly, sometimes purely accidentally, sometimes because we're just going through some shit, and there's a flash of light telling us that, whoa, there's so much beyond you, right? So yeah, there's so many ways to reach that. But yeah, it comes to us one way or the other. And that's why we all start figuring out, we all start investigating, we all start looking for ways, paths, traditions, yoga, whatever. And that's how we, start searching. That's the onset of the whole journey. It wouldn't happen without.
I totally agree. And just one final comment on what you said, Kieran, about compassion. We need to have compassion, and this compassion is one of wisdom. I feel like knowing that we are we have these tendencies for a reason, and like understanding the general direction that we're going in, even if sometimes we seem to be backsliding. Everyone is still moving forward, and every effort counts. Atomic habits.
Yeah. So that's beautiful what you said, because yes, compassion is a wisdom personified. It's wisdom enacted. Like, of course, it's easy to read and parrot what we've read, but it becomes true wisdom only when all that knowledge is lived out of it's a living reality for you. That is living wisdom. But yeah, compassion is definitely one such thing that yes, is wisdom in action.
Sorry, one thing.
I just wanted to say that the compassion is considered one of the higher cities, something really worth like gaining and reaching out.
Yeah. Yes, but not a city, America.
Actually, I think it is named as one of the higher cities.
Maybe the seed is coming in this Kali Yoga, maybe like this, maybe we are not having so much. I don't know. God knows. One thing they told me just I wanted to share with you. An amazing Tai Chi teacher. She said that in some Buddhist scriptures they say the next Buddha it's I forgot the word, Sanghan. Help me, group of students together. He said the next Buddha will not be a soul, will be a Sanghan. So I think probably I think that's
What's
why the
that?
PS
What's
the
a
next
Sangha?
Brotherhood.
A combination
Brothers
of people,
studying
not one
together.
person.
Community.
Sangha. Oh,
community.
Sangha. Okay, I've heard of it.
Sangha. Sorry.
And
No. I
and
couldn't hear it
adding
properly.
on to what Fatima just said, Buddha prophesies
Nice.
that he'll come back as Maitreya, and then the meaning of Maitreya is a friend. So yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
I don't
That's
know. I'm
beautiful.
thinking a lot that probably we are really meant to grow together. Probably this way of growing compassion, and this is something we start to realize that we all need to really grow together, and and the development of our soulmates will be our own development, and that we need also our soulmates for our own development. I think in this century maybe it's also the new this new version of spirituality. It cannot be anymore me.
Yeah, I think this comes from a deeper realization of the fact that humans are inherently social creatures. That's how our, human safety and security is driven. But then environment is a powerful thing. So therefore, when you are surrounded by people that are, aiming for growth and, spiritual upliftment, then it just happens to serve as that, what you say, a way to keep everyone in check, because your environment really influences what kind of habits you indulge into. And so we are always picking up cues from others, physical, emotional. We sometimes don't even realize, but subconsciously there's so much going on. So Sangha is important, yes. We are in a Sangha anyway.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful vision.
It is. That maybe in some small way we can be the forerunners of what that will be eventually. Is there anything else before? Right. So then to close the meeting, just 2 minutes where we try to focus on, again, that thing inside of us. It's always the observer, never the observed, and send out what we can to help the rest of the world.